Hello NDE narrators. Good morning from Nigeria. God bless the work you do for the body of Christ. I pray channel attracts more subscribers because you deserve more. My name is Zainab Hassan. I'm 28 years old from Maiduguri, Borno State, Nigeria. I am a twin, the older one by just a few minutes. My sister's name was Amina Hassan. She was my other half, my best friend, my mirror. We did everything together, ate from the same plate, wore the same outfits, shared secrets under the covers when we were supposed to be asleep. People in our neighborhood used to say we were like one person living in two bodies. We were born into a strict Muslim household, and our lives were shaped completely by the traditions and rules of Islam. From the day we could talk, we were taught how to greet properly, how to bow during prayer, how to cover ourselves modestly. Every part of our identity was deeply connected to our religion. Islam was not just something we followed, it was the air we breathed. Our father, Malam Umar Hassan, was not just any Muslim man. He was the Imam of the Central Mosque in Gwange, Maiduguri, the largest and most respected mosque in our area. People came to him for prayers, blessings, and guidance. He was feared, respected, and seen as a holy man by the community. Our mother, Hadiza, was a quiet woman who kept to herself, always dressed in full hijab, always by his side. In our house, Islamic values were law. There was no room for debate, no space for questioning. We were trained to obey without hesitation. Amina and I were expected to set an example for the other girls in the neighborhood. As daughters of an imam, we were held to a different standard. Always the first at the mosque, always covered properly, always silent in the presence of elders. Even at a young age, we understood that any mistake from us would reflect badly on our father. Our daily life was tightly controlled. At age 6, we started attending a Quranic school near the mosque. It was a small building with wooden benches, dusty floors, and the loud voices of children reciting the Quran in Arabic. We were taught to memorize entire surahs before we even knew what they meant. The malams didn't care whether we understood. What mattered was obedience, repetition, and discipline. I remember the sting of the cane on my back if I got even one word wrong. It was not about learning, it was about surviving, performing, being perfect. We were taught that Allah sees everything and that His anger is fierce. We were told that questioning Islam was haram, a path to hellfire. So we never asked questions. We learned to hide our doubts, bury our feelings, and submit. That was the only way to survive in our home and in our faith. We started wearing the hijab at age 7. At first it was exciting. It made us feel grown up, like real Muslim girls. But it didn't take long before it started to feel like a cage. On the outside, we were identical, same clothes, same manners, same quietness. But inside, we were beginning to feel differently. Sometimes at night, Amina would whisper to me, "Zainab, do you ever feel like something is missing?" And I would pretend not to hear. I was too afraid to answer. Our father led prayers every night. His voice would echo through the walls as he recited from the Quran. We had to join him whether we liked it or not. Sometimes I would stare at his face, trying to understand how a man could be so full of anger but still claim to speak for God. But I dared not say it out loud. Our home was filled with rules: what to wear, what to say, when to eat, when to pray, how to walk, how to talk. Everything was about Islam. Even our birthdays were ignored because celebrating them was considered bid'ah, a sinful innovation. Our mother enforced our father's will without question. She taught us to wash ourselves properly before prayers, how to avoid impurity, how to prepare dates and milk during Ramadan, and how to never speak unless spoken to. She used to say, "Amina, Zainab, remember you are the daughters of an imam. What you do reflects on your father." So we learned to smile when we didn't want to say Alhamdulillah when we were hurting, and to hide every emotion that didn't align with what Islam said was holy. In public, we looked like the perfect family. Behind closed doors, we were prisoners of expectation. As girls, we were not allowed to dream too much. Our future was already decided for us. We would finish school, marry good Muslim men, raise children, and stay loyal to Islam until we died. That was our path. That was our destiny. And as long as we stayed on that path, our family name would remain honorable. I remember the day I told my father I wanted to be a teacher. He looked at me for a long time and said, "If Allah wills. But your most important job is to be a good Muslim wife." Amina, always braver than me, once said she wanted to travel the world. Our father raised his voice for the first time in weeks. Travel? Alone? What kind of Muslim woman speaks like this? After that, she stopped dreaming out loud, but I could see it in her eyes. She still believed there was more to life than this. The mosque was just 3 streets from our house, and we were expected to be there every Friday, every Eid, every special occasion. Even when we were sick, our father would insist we come, sit at the back with the women, and listen. There was no mercy for excuses. "If you can breathe, you can pray," he would say. I hated the mosque. Not because of the prayer, but because of the pressure. I could feel the eyes of the women watching us, judging our every move. Were our hijabs pinned correctly? Were we sitting still enough? Did we respond to the khutbah the right way? It was exhausting. Amina would sometimes squeeze my hand and whisper, "Let's pretend we're somewhere else." And we would close our eyes and imagine being on a beach or in a garden or just anywhere but here. But as soon as we opened them, the reality came crashing back. One thing about Amina, she was always the one to speak her mind, even if quietly. As we got older, she started asking questions more boldly. Once she asked our father, "Why does Allah punish so easily? Isn't he supposed to be merciful?" His face darkened. He didn't answer with words. He slapped her. I will never forget the sound. It echoed through the room like thunder. After that, she stopped asking him anything. But I knew those questions never left her. At school, she would borrow Christian literature from classmates. I found a torn piece of a New Testament hidden inside her school bag once. When I confronted her, she looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "Don't tell Baba, please." And I didn't. That was the first time I realized that the faith we were raised in was not enough for her anymore. She was searching for something more. I wanted to protect her, but I was scared. I knew what could happen if anyone found out. We had heard stories of girls disowned, beaten, or worse, for turning away from Islam. Apostasy was not just seen as a sin, it was seen as betrayal. And to be the daughter of an imam and abandon Islam, that was more than just shameful. It was a death sentence. But Amina never stopped searching. She would ask our teachers tricky questions, knowing they wouldn't have the answers. She would stay up late reading in secret. She started to smile less at the mosque and more at school. And I started to worry. I loved her, but I feared for her. Every time she challenged a rule, I would feel my stomach twist. "Please, Amina," I would say, "just stay quiet." But she couldn't. Something inside her was changing. She was no longer afraid of the truth. By the time we finished secondary school, the gap between us and the rest of our family had quietly grown. My father was already planning our marriages. He had picked out 2 young men from the mosque, sons of respected sheikhs. Amina said no. It was the first time she had ever said no to Baba. I couldn't believe it. I was frozen, waiting for his reaction. But she didn't flinch. She stood there, steady, like a woman who had already made up her mind. That night, Baba didn't speak to us. He didn't beat her. He didn't argue. He just looked at her with disgust and walked away. I think that silence hurt more than anything. That's when I knew she was done pretending. And I also knew, deep down, that our lives would never be the same again. We got admitted into the University of Lagos together. Our journey there felt like freedom, but it was not without struggle. Baba didn't want us to go. He believed Lagos was corrupt, full of immoral behavior, and worst of all, Christians. He said the city would spoil our minds and make us forget our roots. He feared the influence of Western culture, the way women dressed, and the kind of freedom young people had there. But Mama stood her ground for the first time in a long while. "Let them go," she said quietly. "They have earned it." Her voice was low but firm. I think she knew there was something in us that needed to grow beyond Maiduguri. Baba finally agreed, but with conditions. We were not to join any clubs, not to speak to Christian students, and under no circumstances were we allowed to attend any church. We promised him what he wanted to hear, but our hearts were already restless. Arriving in Lagos was like stepping into a different world. The campus was alive with colors, voices, music, and ideas we had never seen before. Girls wore jeans and braided hairstyles, laughing loudly without fear. Boys spoke freely, holding books in one hand and their dreams in the other. There was no call to prayer from a mosque nearby, no one reminding you to lower your gaze. For the first few days, Amina and I stayed quiet. We wore our long gowns and hijabs, kept to ourselves, and avoided anything that would draw attention. But even in silence, we were watching. We noticed that some of the kindest students were Christians. They didn't hide their faith. They greeted us with smiles and invited us to class discussions. Some of them even said, "God bless you," instead of "Assalamu alaikum," and it felt strange but sincere. Slowly, something inside us began to shift, especially in Amina. It started one Thursday evening. Amina came back from the library and told me she saw a poster for a fellowship program called Jesus Saves Campus Mission. It was happening near the science faculty. She didn't say much, only that it looked interesting. The next week, we passed by the venue on our way back to the hostel. We heard singing, soft but full of energy. People were clapping, dancing, praying out loud. It was nothing like the mosque. There was laughter in their worship. Amina stood there, watching, eyes wide. She said, "Let's go inside, just for 5 minutes." I hesitated, terrified that someone might recognize us, but something told me to follow her. We sat in the back, quiet, hidden behind a pillar. They were preaching from a Bible, talking about grace and forgiveness, about a God who sees and knows you personally. I felt a strange pull in my chest, like someone was speaking directly to me. We returned the next week, and the week after that. We never signed anything. We never gave our names. We just sat quietly and listened. The preacher talked about how Jesus died for everyone's sins, not just for Christians, but for all people. He said God was not angry, but loving, and that Jesus came to bring peace to our hearts. I didn't understand all of it, but it touched something deep inside me. Amina, I noticed, began asking more questions. She bought a small notebook and started writing things down. Back in our room, she would ask me things like, "What if God is more than we were told?" I didn't know how to answer. We had been taught all our lives that Islam was the final truth, that Allah is not a father, and that Jesus was just a prophet. But in those meetings, the way they spoke of Jesus didn't sound like blasphemy. It sounded like love. At night, Amina began reading a Bible that one of the fellowship girls secretly gave her. It was small, with a black cover, and she hid it inside her biology textbook. She would read when she thought I was asleep, but I saw her lips moving in the dim light. One day, she handed it to me. "Read Matthew," she whispered. "Just read it." I told her no. I was scared. I felt like opening that book would make me a traitor. But that night, curiosity overcame fear. I opened to the first page of Matthew and started reading silently. The words were strange, but something about them felt gentle and honest. It was not angry. It didn't sound like warnings or threats. It talked about mercy, about light, about a God who came close. I didn't tell Amina, but I kept reading every night. The more I read, the more I wanted to understand this man they called Jesus. Despite everything we were discovering, we kept our new interests hidden. We still went to the mosque on Fridays and wore our hijabs on campus. We still prayed the way we were taught, but inside we were asking questions that Islam could not answer. Who is this Jesus? Why does his message feel different from what we heard about Muhammad? Why do I feel peace when I hear his name? We didn't want to betray our family, especially Baba. But our hearts were no longer satisfied with rituals and fear. One Sunday morning, Amina woke me up and said, "Let's go." I didn't ask where. I already knew. We walked across campus to a student-run church. We sat in the back again, quiet, unnoticed. That day they sang a song called "I Surrender All." I didn't know the lyrics, but I cried. I didn't know why I was crying. I just knew something inside me was breaking and healing. It wasn't a sudden decision. There was no lightning, no vision, no voice from heaven. It was quiet, like a seed slowly growing. One evening after fellowship, Amina and I were walking back to the hostel. She turned to me and said, "I believe this is the truth." I said nothing at first, but I nodded. That night we prayed for the first time, not in Arabic, not from memorized lines, but from our hearts. "Jesus, if you are who they say you are, then show us. We want to know you." We didn't tell anyone. We were still scared. But in that moment, something shifted forever. We had tasted a new kind of truth, and we knew deep down we could never unsee it, never unfeel it. We were no longer just the imam's daughters. We were seekers, and for the first time in our lives, we felt free. After that night, we prayed and asked Jesus to reveal himself. Nothing around us changed, but everything inside us did. We still dressed the same way, wearing our long gowns and hijabs every day. We still answered to our Muslim names and followed the routines expected of us. Every Friday, we went to the school mosque. We bowed our heads, recited the Quran, and prayed just like everyone else. But our hearts were no longer in it. It felt like we were acting in a play, following lines we no longer believed. Amina and I had to be careful. Lagos might be freer than Maiduguri, but we knew that news of 2 daughters of a northern imam converting to Christianity would not be taken lightly. We didn't want to bring shame to our family. More than that, we didn't want to die. We had heard what happened to apostates, people who left Islam. It was not just a spiritual decision, it was a dangerous one. We began living 2 lives, one outside, one inside. To the world, we were still Muslim girls from Borno State. But in our small hostel room, we were learning how to walk with Jesus. Our transformation didn't happen overnight. We made many mistakes. Sometimes we were confused. Sometimes we were scared. But slowly, our faith grew. We stopped just attending fellowship on campus. We began to stay behind, talking to the leaders, asking them questions. We met other converts, some from the north like us, others from Catholic or nominal Christian homes, who had only just discovered Jesus for themselves. They didn't treat us like outcasts. They treated us like sisters. One of them, Kioma, became a close friend. She would sit with us after class, sharing Bible verses and encouraging us. She never pressured us. She just listened. Through her, we learned that faith wasn't about fear. It was about relationship, something we had never experienced in Islam. Chioma introduced us to a small Bible study group that met on Tuesday nights in a classroom after lectures. It wasn't a formal church setting, just about 6 of us with Bibles, notebooks, and questions. We were nervous the first time. We wore hoodies over our veils and kept the lights dim just in case. The leader was a quiet young man named Daniel. He was gentle, patient, and full of peace. He never made us feel ignorant. Even when we asked questions that probably sounded childish, we studied the book of John together, chapter by chapter. I remember reading John 1:12. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God. That verse stayed in my heart for days. Could it really be true that I, Zainab Hassan, a girl from a strict Muslim home, could become a daughter of God? The idea shook me, but it also made me cry. We prayed together in that classroom, not in Arabic, not with memorized words, but in our own voices. At first, I felt shy. I wasn't used to speaking to God without a script. I used to believe that Allah only listened when we performed the prayers perfectly. Clean body, clean clothes, clean words. But here I saw people praying from the heart. Daniel told us that we didn't need to be perfect to talk to Jesus. He wanted to hear our pain, our doubts, even our silence. That changed everything for me. At night, Amina and I would kneel by our beds, whispering prayers so low that even the walls couldn't hear. Jesus, help us. We are scared, but we want to know you more. We began to read the Psalms before bed. They comforted us. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. It became more than just words. It became our lifeline. The challenge was keeping all of this hidden from our family. Baba called every weekend. We had to switch back into our old selves, reciting Quranic greetings, telling him we were still attending the mosque, still praying 5 times a day. Mama asked if we had made any Muslim friends. Stay close to your people, she said. The South can change people. Her voice trembled when she said it. I think she already knew something was different, but she didn't press. I think she was afraid to know the truth. Amina and I made a silent agreement. We wouldn't lie outright, but we wouldn't reveal anything either. We were not ready to face the consequences. Instead, we poured ourselves into learning. We started keeping journals, writing down scriptures, our thoughts, our struggles. Amina had a favorite verse, Romans 8:38-39. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. She would read it aloud whenever we felt anxious. It gave us strength. Even though we had peace inside, the fear of exposure never left us. One afternoon, I returned from class and found Amina crying on the floor. Someone had broken into our locker. Her Bible was missing. We panicked. Was it just a thief looking for valuables? Or was it someone from our block trying to find evidence? That night, we barely slept, but nothing happened. No one said anything. We took it as a warning from God. Be more careful. After that, we started keeping our Bible in a small black nylon bag that we hid under a loose floor tile behind the bed. It felt like we were hiding treasure, and in many ways we were. Every verse we read, every word of prayer was more valuable than anything we had ever known. It was not just about belief anymore. It was about survival. But we didn't stop. The fire was already burning. It could not be put out. We started to experience moments that felt supernatural. Once during a prayer meeting, a girl stood up and shared a vision she had. She said she saw 2 girls standing in the middle of fire, but the fire didn't burn them. Instead, the flames turned into light. Amina and I looked at each other. We didn't say anything, but we both knew. That word was for us. Another time, I had a dream. I saw a man in white with his hands stretched out. He didn't speak, but I felt peace like never before. When I woke up, I told Amina and she smiled. That's him, she said. That's Jesus. These moments were not common, but they were powerful. They reminded us that we were not alone, even when the fear felt overwhelming. Jesus was walking with us in secret, just as we were following him in secret. He was our hiding place. We also began to understand the cost of this faith. We heard stories of students who were exposed. One girl from Kano was nearly beaten to death by her cousins when they found out she had been baptized. Another boy had to flee campus because his name appeared on a Muslim student's blacklist. We knew what could happen. We counted the risk every day. But we also knew that this new life was worth more than the old one. Islam had given us rules, fear, and shame. Jesus was giving us freedom, joy, and love. We had never felt seen before, truly known and loved. Amina once said, I used to pray to Allah and feel like I was talking to the sky. But now when I pray, I feel like someone is listening. That was the difference. We were not just converts, we were being transformed, day by day, prayer by prayer, verse by verse. We never told our story to anyone outside the fellowship. Not yet, it felt too dangerous. But within our circle, we found safety. Daniel, Chioma, and a few others knew our background. They prayed with us, encouraged us, and never pressured us. They told us, when the time is right, God will make a way. We believed them. We also knew that this season of secrecy could not last forever. One day, the truth would come out. One day, we would have to stand up and say, yes, we believe in Jesus. But for now, we cherished our quiet growth. Amina started keeping a prayer journal. She wrote down names of people she wanted to see saved. Baba, Mama, our younger cousins, even some of our lecturers. If Jesus saved me, she said, he can save anyone. That was the hope we carried in our hearts, burning, hidden, but unstoppable. I remember the night we fasted and prayed together for the first time. It was not Ramadan. It was not part of any rule. It was just us, choosing to draw close to God. We skipped dinner, knelt side by side, and prayed until midnight. We cried, we laughed, we sang softly so no one would hear. In that small room, something shifted. It was no longer about hiding. It was about building a foundation that could not be shaken. I looked at Amina that night, and I saw a woman full of faith, no longer afraid. She looked at me and said, no matter what happens, promise me one thing, never go back. I nodded, holding her hand. I won't, and I meant it. The fire inside us was real, and though it was hidden from the world, it was alive. It was preparing us for what was coming next, even if we didn't know it yet. After our final exams at Unilag, the next big thing was NYSC. Like every other graduate in Nigeria, we waited eagerly for the posting list. Deep inside, I hoped Amina and I would be sent to the same state, or at least somewhere close. But when the results came out, my heart dropped. I was posted to Ogun State. Amina was sent to Taraba State. It felt like a piece of me was being pulled away. Taraba was far, unfamiliar, and mostly rural. I begged her to apply for redeployment, but she smiled and said, maybe God wants me there for a reason. We hugged tightly the morning we both left Lagos. I went west, she went north. It was the first time we would live apart since birth. I didn't say it then, but I had a bad feeling. Something deep in my chest felt unsettled. I tried to shake it off and told myself everything would be fine. Ogun was peaceful. I was posted to a school in Ijebu-Ode. The environment was calm and the people were welcoming. My students were curious and respectful, and the staff didn't interfere with my personal life. I settled in quickly and found a local fellowship group that met on Sunday evenings. They helped me stay focused and grounded. Every evening, Amina and I would talk on the phone. She told me her PPA was a government secondary school in Jalingo town. She said the students were mostly from Muslim homes, and some had never even seen a Bible before. But she didn't sound afraid. In fact, she sounded excited. Zainab, she said once, they listen to me like they've never heard this kind of love before. I tell them about Jesus not as a prophet, but as someone who knows them by name. I warned her to be careful, but she always laughed. If I die doing this, then I'll die fulfilled. At first, I thought maybe she was exaggerating. Maybe she was just caught up in the passion. But with time, I noticed that her tone wasn't just excitement. It was boldness. She started organizing small prayer times with her students during break. She brought her Bible to class and read short verses before starting her lessons. She even told me she had started a discipleship meeting with 4 students under a tree at the back of the school. I was proud of her, but I was also scared. Taraba isn't like Lagos or even Ogun. It has a strong Muslim presence, and some areas are known for religious intolerance. I reminded her often to be careful. Preach with wisdom, I said. Not everyone will understand. But Amina would reply, they didn't understand Jesus either. I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to plant a seed. I couldn't argue with that, even though my heart kept getting heavier. Then she started telling me about the things happening around her. She mentioned how one of her fellow corps members warned her to slow down. A teacher had pulled her aside after school and said some parents were starting to talk. The students were going home and telling their families that Corporal Amina taught them about someone named Jesus who died on the cross. One evening, she called me sounding a little shaken. Zainab, she said, my landlord's wife asked if I've become a Christian. I didn't answer. I just smiled and walked away. I told her to stop everything and lay low for a while. Just focus on teaching, I begged. But she didn't agree. If I stop now, I'll lose the ones who have started to believe. Some of them are already reading the Bible with me. I sighed. My twin sister was no longer just curious about Jesus. She was a soldier. There was one call I remember very clearly. It was on a Wednesday evening. I had just finished preparing lesson notes when Amina's name popped up on my screen. Her voice was low and serious. "Zainab, I think something is happening," she said. She explained that a parent had come to the school angrily, demanding to see her. The head teacher told her to be cautious and stop mentioning anything religious in class. "I think someone reported me," she said quietly. "But it's okay, I won't stop." I didn't know what to say. I wanted to scream, to beg her to leave Taraba and come to Ogun. I even suggested she feign illness and seek redeployment, but she refused. Jesus said we should not fear those who can kill the body. "I know what I'm doing, Zainab. I'm ready." I didn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned, praying silently for her safety, but my spirit was restless. The week after that, her calls became shorter. Sometimes she didn't call at all. I tried not to panic, but I knew something was wrong. On Saturday, she finally called and said, "I'm fine, just being careful." She didn't sound like herself. She said some young men in the area had started looking at her strangely and whispering when she passed. Her students had been told not to talk to her again. The school sent her a written warning, advising her to stop creating religious confusion. But still she continued. She said she met secretly with two of the girls who had accepted Jesus and encouraged them to stay strong. She ended the call with a quiet, "If anything happens to me, just know I did what I believed in." I cried after that call, not because I thought she was dying, but because I felt her farewell in her voice. Something told me we were nearing the end. And then it came, the day everything shattered. But I will talk about that in the next chapter. What happened in Jalingo shook me to my bones and left a scar in my soul that I will carry forever. Amina was not afraid. She walked into fire with her eyes wide open. I wanted to stop her, but I couldn't. The love she had for Jesus had consumed every fear she used to have. And while I stayed in safety, she walked into danger with faith. I still hear her voice in my head, telling me not to go back, not to be afraid. She believed in the truth she had found, and she gave her life for it. That kind of courage doesn't die, it echoes. It was Sunday evening. I was about to prepare for the school week when my phone rang. I looked at the screen and saw an unknown number from Taraba. My heart skipped. I had not heard from Amina in 2 days, and I had been telling myself she was probably just busy. I answered quickly. "Hello?" A man's voice spoke in Hausa, asking if I was related to Corporal Amina Hassan. I said yes. Then his voice dropped. "She has been attacked," he said. My legs froze. "Attacked how?" I asked. He paused, then said quietly, "There was a mob. Some people said she insulted the Prophet Muhammad. They said she preached to Muslim children. They came to her lodge. I'm sorry." My phone slipped from my hand. I screamed so loud my neighbors came running. I kept repeating, "No, no, no." I didn't even hear the rest of what he said. Later that night, I spoke to another corps member from her area. His name was Tolu. He had known Amina from camp at the NYSC orientation camp in Sebre, near the outskirts of Jalingo town. Tolu said rumors had started 2 weeks earlier that Amina was converting Muslim children in her class. He said some parents were angry and accused her of blaspheming Prophet Muhammad by saying Jesus is the Son of God. On that Sunday afternoon, a group of men gathered near her lodge in the Nukai area, close to the Jalingo-Yola Expressway. They were shouting, banging on doors. Some were armed with sticks. Amina tried to call for help, but there was no security. A neighbor who supported her tried to intervene but was pushed aside. The mob broke her door open, dragged her out into the street, and beat her. They poured petrol over her and set her on fire. No police came. No one stopped them. Tolu said some people were recording on their phones. Others stood by and watched. She screamed for a while, but the fire took over. Her body was burnt beyond recognition. A teacher from her school arrived too late and found what was left of her. She was gone, Zainab, he told me, and nobody did anything. I collapsed when I heard those words. My sister, my twin, burnt alive in the middle of the street for preaching love, for sharing Jesus. I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't eat. I couldn't breathe. I lay on the floor for hours, holding her old messages, playing her voice notes over and over. If anything happens to me, just know I did what I believed in, she had said. And now it had happened. She died exactly how she lived, without fear, holding on to the truth. But I was angry, not just at the people who killed her, but at the silence that followed. There was no news headline, no official statement from NYSC, no mention from the Taraba State government. I searched online, nothing. The only thing I found was a vague post on Facebook from someone who lived in Jalingo, saying, "Another Christian corper disrespected the prophet. Allah's judgment is swift." The comments below were filled with approval. People wrote Allahu Akbar, praising the mob for what they did. My anger turned into fire. My sister was not a criminal. She didn't insult anyone. She spoke about peace. She taught children to read and encouraged them to seek truth. And for that, she was murdered in cold blood. The authorities said nothing because she was just one girl. And because she was a Christian convert, even NYSC only sent a simple condolence letter. No justice, no arrest, nothing. They buried her like a mistake, quickly, quietly, and without dignity. I tried to travel to Taraba, but I was told it was not safe. They might come for you too, a Christian brother warned me. They know she had a twin. I stayed in Ogun, but I was restless. My body was in one place, but my soul was burning. I remembered when we both stood at the gate of the NYSC orientation camp in Sibri, laughing and hugging before going in. "Take care of yourself," she had said. Now that same camp had released her into a place that killed her. I saw a photo of her room after the fire. Charred walls, burnt mattress, a half-melted Bible on the ground. That image haunted me for weeks. I asked God, "Where were you?" I screamed into my pillow every night. The pain was too much. Amina was not just my sister. She was my other half, and now she was gone, just ashes. People from our hometown in Maiduguri heard the news quickly. Baba didn't call, but I heard through a cousin that he had said, "She chose her path. She died a kafira." Mama cried for days. She begged him to bring Amina's body home, but he refused. He said she brought shame to the family. Even in death, they rejected her. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him that the same Jesus she died for was the one who loved her more than anyone else ever had. But I stayed silent. I knew he would never understand. In that moment, I realized just how alone I was. The family I once knew had turned their backs on both of us. I was now an orphan of truth, cut off, left behind, clinging only to the voice of Jesus that still whispered in my heart, "You are not alone." I held a private memorial for her with my fellowship in Ogun. We lit a candle and sang her favorite song, "I Have Decided to Follow Jesus." As the light flickered, I wept, not just for her death, but for the silence of the world. For every time someone looked away, for every Christian who hides their faith in fear, for every convert who knows that following Jesus could mean death. Amina didn't die for politics. She didn't die for fame. She died for truth. And I promised her that night, "I will not let your voice be buried. They burned your body, but they will not burn your story." I began to write down everything, every memory, every word, every scripture she ever loved. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew one thing: my sister did not die in vain. 2 weeks after Amina's death, I made the decision to return to Maiduguri. I had not planned it. I didn't even think it through. One morning, I just packed my bag and boarded a night bus. I couldn't explain it, but something in me needed to face home again. I needed to walk the streets where we were raised and stand in the house where our faith journey began. When I arrived, everything felt colder. The streets looked the same, but nothing felt familiar. Mama opened the door and burst into tears. She held me tight and whispered, "Zainab, you should not have come." She looked thinner, broken by the weight of everything that had happened. Baba was not home yet. I sat with Mama in silence. She brought me food I couldn't eat. My hands were trembling. I knew I had walked into danger, but I also knew I couldn't keep running forever. That evening, Baba came in. He didn't greet me. He didn't sit down. He just stood in the doorway and stared at me. Then he asked in a cold, flat voice, "Are you also a Christian?" I wanted to lie, to protect myself, but my lips wouldn't move. I looked him in the eyes and said, "Yes, Baba, I believe in Jesus." The silence that followed was thick and heavy. Mama gasped. Baba didn't say a word. He turned and left the room. That night, I didn't sleep. My door stayed shut, but I could feel the storm building. The next morning, I tried to speak to Mama, but she avoided my eyes. Later that day, Baba called my two uncles. They came with long faces and stern voices. They didn't ask questions. They accused. They said I was an embarrassment, that I had dishonored the family and the name of Allah. One of them slapped me across the face. The other said I had one last chance to repent. I refused to deny Jesus. They dragged me into the inner room and beat me with belts and sticks. My back bled, my head spun. Mama cried and begged them to stop, but they told her to keep quiet. "This one will bring shame if she is not dealt with," one of them said. I passed out at some point. When I woke up, I was on the floor with a swollen lip and aching ribs. That night, Mama snuck into the room and placed a bag beside me. Inside was a wrapper, my ID card, and a small envelope with money. She held my hand and whispered, "Leave before dawn. Don't let them kill you like they killed Amina." I looked at her face and I saw her pain. She couldn't protect me any more than she could protect Amina. But in that moment, I knew she still loved us, both of us, even in silence. Before sunrise, I slipped out of the house through the back compound and walked straight to Borno Express Park. I bought a ticket back to the south and never looked back. On the bus, I kept my head down, trembling with every bump on the road. My body was sore, but my heart was worse. I kept hearing Amina's voice, seeing her smile, remembering the fire. I kept asking myself, why her? Why not me? I had doubts. I had guilt. I wondered if I had prayed enough for her. I asked God why He let her die and let me live. It felt unfair. The pain of surviving when the one you love most is gone. It's a kind of pain you can't explain. I cried silently all the way to Ibadan. I stayed with a Christian sister from fellowship who took me in without asking too many questions. I slept for 2 days straight. My body needed rest, but my soul needed answers. The days that followed were the hardest of my life. I felt like a shadow, like I was only half alive. I couldn't eat. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I stopped going to fellowship. I avoided prayer. I didn't blame God out loud, but in my heart I questioned everything. Why would He allow His servant to be burned alive for doing His work? Why didn't He send angels to save her? Why did He watch in silence while Amina screamed? But even in my confusion, something kept pulling me back to Him. One night I picked up Amina's old journal, the one she used during Bible study. I flipped through the pages, and on one page she had written in bold letters, "No matter what happens, never stop speaking. Even if I die, let the truth live." I closed the book and wept. That night I knelt by my bed and prayed for the first time in weeks. It wasn't a loud prayer, just a whisper. "Jesus, I'm still here. I don't understand, but I trust you." Peace didn't come immediately, but strength did. The next morning, I got up and told my host I was ready to return to fellowship. When I arrived, some people were surprised to see me. Others had heard what happened. They welcomed me with open arms, prayed for me, and reminded me that Amina's blood was not wasted. That day, I shared her story with the group. I spoke through tears, but with boldness. I told them about how we found Jesus, how we followed Him in secret, and how she gave her life for the gospel. The room was silent. Some cried, others prayed. That was the day I realized that fear had no power over me anymore. I had already lost the most important person in my life. What else was there to fear? From that moment, I made up my mind. I would not hide anymore. I started visiting Christian gatherings to share what happened to Amina. I joined a missions team that preached in rural areas. I knew the risk. I knew my name could be reported, that I could be tracked, that my family might come for me again, but I didn't care. It was 3 months after Amina's death when it happened. I had just come back from a night prayer meeting. My eyes were swollen from crying, and my chest felt heavy with pain. I had not eaten all day. I was tired of the silence, tired of pretending to be okay. I lay flat on the floor, face down, whispering through tears, "Jesus, are you really there? I need to see you. I need to know you still care. If you love me, if you are truly who you say you are, please show me." As I drifted between sleep and tears, the air in the room changed. The darkness faded and a warm, golden light filled the space. It wasn't harsh like the sun, but soft like peace itself. Then I saw him, a man clothed in white, his eyes full of truth, his presence stronger than anything I've ever felt. He didn't speak at first, but I felt his love wrap around me like a blanket. I trembled and whispered again, "Why didn't you save her? Why did you let them burn Amina?" He stepped closer. "Zainab," he said gently, "her mission was fulfilled. Her death was not a defeat, it was a seed." I started to cry. But she was so young. She was only doing good. She was just telling children about you. He nodded slowly. "Did I not say, whoever loses their life for my sake will find it?" Matthew 10:39. Amina gave me her life. She did not die alone. I was with her through the fire. I caught her spirit the moment her breath left her body. What you saw as tragedy, I see as glory. I wept even more. But I miss her. I feel like I failed her. He looked into my eyes and said, "You have not failed her. You are still running, but now you must run with purpose." Then suddenly, beside him, I saw her, Amina. She looked radiant. Her face had no scars, no pain. She wore white too, and her eyes were full of light. She smiled at me with so much joy, I could barely stand it. "Zainab," she said softly, "I'm not dead. I'm alive, more alive than I ever was on earth." I took a step forward, my voice trembling. "Why did you have to go first? Why not me?" She reached out as if to touch my hand. "Because my time came, and because someone had to stay and finish the work." Jesus turned to me and said, "You must hold the fort. Do not turn back. Many are watching you. Some will believe because of your words. Others will hate you. But do not fear them. In this world, you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." John 16:33. I fell to my knees, overwhelmed. Still kneeling in that vision, I looked up and asked, "But what if I get tired? What if I'm not strong enough?" Jesus replied, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." 2 Corinthians 12:9. Then he added, "You will speak to nations, Zainab, not with a microphone, but with your scars. And those who are in hiding will find courage through your story. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden." Matthew 5:14. I turned again to Amina, barely able to breathe. "Will I see you again?" She nodded. "If you don't give up, if you hold on till the end, we will meet again in this glory." Jesus spoke again, "To him who overcomes, I will give the crown of life." Revelation 2:10. I didn't want to leave, but I felt my body being pulled back slowly. As the vision faded, Jesus said one last thing. "Tell them, speak boldly, for I have anointed your mouth, and I will be with you always, even to the end of the age." Matthew 28:20. Amina blew me a kiss and whispered, "Run well, Zainab. Finish strong." Then the light disappeared and I was back in my room, on the floor, face drenched with tears, but my heart full of fire. The pain was still there, but so was peace. The questions hadn't all been answered. But the fear was gone. I had seen Jesus. I had seen my sister. And I had been given a message I could never forget. Don't look back. Run your race well. When I woke up, tears were pouring down my face. But it wasn't from sadness. It was from a peace I had never known before. From that day, something inside me changed. I no longer felt abandoned. I knew Jesus had heard my cries. I knew he was with me, and I knew Amina was not dead. She was alive in heaven, waiting for me. That vision stayed with me. Every day since, I have carried those words in my heart. Hold the fort. I began to pray more, not out of fear or duty, but out of love and connection. Sometimes I would feel a strong presence beside me, like someone was praying with me. Other times I would wake up with Bible verses in my heart that I hadn't even memorized. It felt like the Holy Spirit was now living with me, guiding me, reminding me that I was not alone. In those quiet moments, I began to understand that Amina's death was not in vain. It wasn't a loss, it was a doorway. Through her sacrifice, I had found courage. Through her pain, I had found purpose. Her life taught me what it truly means to follow Jesus, not just in words, but in action, in suffering, and even in death. Before, I used to pray for safety. Now, I pray for strength. Before, I used to ask God to take away the pain. Now, I ask him to use the pain for something greater. Every time I share her story, someone draws closer to Christ. Every time I speak her name, someone's heart is touched. Her voice didn't die in the fire. It became louder. It became a trumpet that now sounds through me, and through that, I have found healing. Her absence pushed me into the arms of God, and there I found everything I was looking for. To my Muslim brothers and sisters who may be secretly reading this, I want you to know your questions are not evil. I had questions too. So did Amina. We were told that asking questions was rebellion, that doubt was haram. But what if those questions are your soul crying out for truth? What if what you're feeling is not confusion, but an invitation? We were taught to fear Allah, but we never knew him. We were told to repeat verses, but we never understood love. Jesus is not against you. He is not your enemy. He's not calling you to hate your family, but to find the God who made you and loves you. I know it's scary. I know the cost is high, but I'm here to tell you, it's worth it. Your soul is worth more than your silence. Your heart deserves to know the one who created it. If you're reading this and something inside you is stirring, don't ignore it. That pull in your chest, that whisper in your heart, that's not random. That's Jesus knocking. He's not a prophet alone. He is the Son of God. He is the Savior. He is the reason I can smile again after burying half of my soul. He is the reason I have peace even when people threaten me. He didn't just give me a religion, he gave me life, real life. Amina died with his name on her lips, and now I live with his name in my heart. I'm not here to force you. I'm not even asking you to change overnight. I'm just asking you to seek him for yourself. Say a simple prayer. Jesus, if you are real, show me. That's how it started for me. That's how it started for Amina. And he answered. Today, I no longer hide who I am. My name is Zainab Hassan, and I am a follower of Jesus Christ. I speak because I must. I speak because there are others like me, young Muslim women in Nigeria who are afraid, alone, and desperate for truth. I speak because the fire that burned my sister only lit the path for my voice. I have found peace, not because life is easy, but because Christ walks with me through every storm. I know my life is still in danger. I know that my family may never accept me again, but I have made my choice. And if I must carry a cross, I will carry it with joy, because I know who walks ahead of me, and I know who waits for me at the finish line, my Savior and my sister. So if you're hearing this, know this is not just my story. It can be yours too. You may feel lost, but you can be found. You may feel afraid, but you can be free. You may be questioning everything, but Jesus is ready to show you everything. This world is full of pain, yes, but there is a joy beyond the pain, a light stronger than the darkness, and a love deeper than anything you've ever known. His name is Jesus. He found me. He is calling you. Will you answer?